Captain Ilara Voss gripped the armrests of her command chair, the hum of the Endurance's engines vibrating through the deck like a distant heartbeat. The bridge was a cocoon of dim lights and flickering holoscreens, the crew's faces etched with the weariness of months in the void. Ilara's dark hair was pulled back in a tight braid, her uniform crisp despite the recycled air that always carried a faint metallic tang. She was the steady one, the captain who turned crises into checklists, but even she felt the knot in her stomach as the sensor array pinged with the first signs of the nebula. "Status, Lieutenant Reyes?" she asked, her voice calm, cutting through the low murmur of the bridge. Reyes, her wiry first officer with a perpetual squint from too many late shifts, leaned over his console. He was the cautious type, always double-checking readings, his fingers dancing across the interface. "Nebula's denser than projected, Captain. Ion storms flaring up, could scramble our NAV systems if we push through blind." Across the bridge, Dr. Kai Lin adjusted his glasses, his lab coat a stark white against the gray bulkheads. The xenobiologist was the dreamer of the group, his mind always leaping to what lay beyond the scans, but right now his brow furrowed in concentration. "The Council's outpost is on the other side. If we detour, we lose the element of surprise. They've been hoarding those artifact sites for years, claiming diplomatic priority." Ilara nodded, her eyes on the main viewer where the nebula swirled like a living bruise against the stars. The Galactic Council, those smug alliances of elder species, had declared the region off-limits, their victory in the last territorial accord sealing humanity's exclusion. But whispers from black market traders spoke of ancient tech buried in the gas clouds, relics that could level the playing field for a fledgling species like hers. The Endurance wasn't here for diplomacy, it was here to claim what humanity needed to survive the next expansion wave. "Helm, plot a micro-jump to skirt the outer edge," Ilara ordered. "Ensign Terra, keep shields modulated for ion interference. We thread this needle, people. No heroics, just precision." Ensign Terra Mills, the youngest at 23, flashed a quick grin from her station. She was the spark, witty under pressure, her freckled face lighting up as she replied, "Aye, Captain. Threading the needle it is. Just don't blame me if we come out smelling like ozone." The ship shuddered as the jump drive engaged, stars streaking into lines before the nebula engulfed them. Alarms blared softly, a chorus of warnings as particles battered the hull. Ilara watched the readings climb, shields holding at 80%, but the interference was already fuzzing the long-range comms. In the heart of it, visibility dropped to meters, the view screen a haze of purple and electric blue. Reyes straightened. "Captain, anomaly ahead. Looks like a debris field. Could be natural, but—" "Evade," Ilara said sharply, her hand tightening on the chair. The ship banked hard, inertia pressing them into their seats. Terra's hands flew over the controls, her usual banter silenced by focus. Then, a jolt rocked the bridge, lights flickering as secondary systems offlined. Kai braced against his console, muttering, "That wasn't debris. Scans show synthetic signatures. Council probes?" Ilara's mind raced. If the Council had seeded the nebula with defenses, their victory was more than paperwork. It was a trap waiting for intruders like them. "Damage report," she demanded, standing now, the weight of command settling heavier. "Nav computers glitching," Reyes reported. "We're drifting toward the core. And comms are dead, no way to call for backup." In the swirling chaos outside, a faint shape emerged on the viewer, the jagged outline of an automated sentry drone, its weapons ports glowing faintly. Ilara's jaw set. They weren't turning back now. Humanity's future hung in this gamble, and she'd be damned if it ended in a gas cloud. "All hands, battle stations. Let's show them what grit looks like." Captain Ilara Voss gripped the armrest of her command chair, the hum of the Endeavor's engines vibrating through the deck like a distant heartbeat. The view screen flickered with static, the alien nebula's tendrils clawing at the edges of visibility. Her crew, small, tight-knit, the kind forged in the fires of forgotten colonies, waited in tense silence. There was Jax, the wiry engineer with a perpetual grease streak on his cheek, tapping his console with fingers that had rebuilt reactors under fire. Beside him Lena, the navigator, her sharp eyes scanning readouts, cautious as ever, always the one to voice the risks no one else wanted to admit. "We've got incoming," Lena said, her voice steady but edged with that familiar wariness. The sensor ping lit up the screen, 3 Council interceptors, sleek and predatory, slicing through the gas clouds like knives. The Galactic Council had declared the nebula a no-fly zone, their victory, in claiming the sector after humanity's push into uncharted space. But Ilara knew better. Their broadcasts were propaganda, masking the truth that humans had already seeded outposts here, hidden tech relays pulsing with data that could shift the balance. Jax leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "Shields are at 80% after that last ion burst. If we run, they'll chase us into the core, nebula's too dense for evasion maneuvers." He wasn't one for panic. His bravery showed in the calm way he rerouted power, buying them seconds. Ilara nodded, her mind racing through options. The plan had been simple. Slip through the outer rim, deliver the supply cache to the forward base, and ghost out before dawn cycle. But the Council's patrols had tightened, their AI-driven ships adapting faster than expected. "No running," she decided, her tone firm, adventurous spark igniting despite the knot in her gut. "We adapt. Jax, vent plasma from the auxiliary thrusters. Make it look like we're venting drive core. Buy us a feint." The engineer grinned, a flash of wit in his eyes. "Clever. It'll mask our signature, but if they scan deep..." He trailed off, fingers flying over controls. The ship shuddered as superheated gas bloomed from the side vents, a false distress signal blooming like a dying star. Lena plotted the course, her caution tempering the boldness. "That'll give us a window to the asteroid cluster. Cover there, but it's tight. One wrong drift and we're debris." The interceptors altered vector, drawn to the plasma bloom, their formation tightening like a noose. Ilara watched, heart pounding in rhythm with the engines. The nebula's glow painted the bridge in eerie purples, a single vivid streak of ionized hydrogen arcing across the void like a warning scar. This wasn't just a delivery, it was defiance, humanity's grit against the Council's iron grip. Lose the cache, and the base starved, colonies cut off, dreams of expansion snuffed out. The lead interceptor fired a probing shot, the beam glancing off their improvised shield. Alarms wailed, sharp and insistent. "Hold course," Ilara barked, her voice cutting through the din. Jax patched in auxiliary power, the ship lurching forward with a groan of straining hulls. As they dove into the asteroid field, rocks tumbling like silent boulders in the gas haze, the second interceptor peeled off to flank. Lena's hands danced on her panel. "They're adapting, predictive algorithms kicking in." A near miss clipped the edge of the field, sending shards pinging against the hull. "Override it," Ilara said, leaning in. "Human unpredictability, remember? Jax, rig a decoy drone, load it with our transponder echo." He chuckled under his breath, already at work. "On it. Launch in 3. The drone spat out, mimicking their profile, drawing fire as it spiraled into a cluster of debris. Explosions lit the screen, brief fireflowers in the dark. They slipped deeper, the Endeavor weaving through the maze with Lena's precise nudges. Tension coiled tighter, breaths held in the dim light. One wrong turn, and the cost was everything. Their lives, the base's hope, humanity's foothold in the stars. But as the interceptors fragmented in pursuit of shadows, Ilara allowed a tight smile. The Council might claim the skies, but humans claimed the cunning to survive them. The base beacon flickered on sensors, close now, a promise amid the peril. Yet the nebula whispered of more chasers, the stakes rising like the gas storms brewing ahead. Captain Ilara Voss gripped the console edge as the shuttle shuddered through the nebula's fringes, its hull groaning against the ion storms. Her crew, 3 humans, battle-hardened from the fringe wars, huddled in the dim cockpit, faces lit by flickering readouts. Jax, the wiry engineer with a perpetual smirk, tapped furiously at his panel, while Lena, the sharp-eyed navigator, cross-checked their trajectory against the Council's blockade maps. Tomas, the quiet medic, monitored vitals, his steady hands betraying no fear. "We've got incoming signatures," Lena said, her voice cutting through the hum of engines. 3 Council interceptors, closing fast from Vector 7. "They're not hailing, straight aggression." Ilara nodded, her jaw set. The Council's decree had been clear. Humanity's expansion halted, their colonies forfeit after the victory at Vega Prime. But whispers from defectors spoke of a backdoor through the nebula, a smuggling route to rally the outer worlds. Their plan was simple: slip through, link up with the resistance, and prove the Council's grip was slipping. Now that plan teetered. Evade pattern Delta, Elara ordered. Jax, reroute power to shields. Buy us time. Jax's fingers danced, diverting energy from life support. The air grew stale, recyclers whining in protest. Shields at 60%. These storms are frying our emitters, won't hold long against their plasma lances. The first interceptor loomed on the view screen, a sleek alien craft etched with the Council's spiral emblem, its weapons glowing like predator eyes. A warning pulse lit the void, then fire. The shuttle bucked, alarms blaring as a glancing hit scorched their flank. Direct hit on the port nacelle, Tomas reported, unstrapping to check seals. No breaches, but we're venting plasma. If we push the engines, we might make the dense cloud ahead. Elara waited, the nebula's heart a maelstrom of radiation and gravity wells that could shred them as easily as the hunters. The Council's ships were built for this, phased hulls that danced through hazards like ghosts. Humans? They improvised. Do it. Lena, plot the tightest weave through the clouds. Make them chase. Lena's eyes narrowed, plotting with frantic precision. It's suicide. One wrong shear and we're atoms. Better atoms than prisoners, Elara replied, her voice steel. She remembered the holos of captured crews, minds probed and bodies repurposed for the Council's endless archives. No. They'd fight on their terms. The shuttle dove, engines screaming as they plunged into the nebula's embrace. Purple tendrils of gas whipped past, sparking against the viewport. Jax cursed as a feedback surge blacked out secondary systems, lights dimming to emergency red. Los de Naveau? We're flying blind in here. Interceptors flanked them, their formations tight, broadcasting surrender demands and clipped galactic standard. Elara ignored it, her mind racing. The initial evasion had worked too well, the Council's caution giving them a lead, but now the storms masked everything. A shadow passed overhead, too close. The lead ship fired blind, a lance grazing their dorsal fin. Brace! Tomas yelled, grabbing handholds. The impact rattled teeth, consoles sparking. Lena fought the controls, the shuttle corkscrewing through a gravity eddy that pulled at the frame like invisible hands. Then, inspiration hit Jax. The debris field, old mining wreckage from the war. If I modulate the grav plates, we can sling through it, use the hulks as cover. Their sensors won't penetrate the alloy scraps. Elara met his gaze, seeing the grit there. Risky. But it's our shot. Do it. As Jax patched in the mods, the shuttle veered toward the floating graveyard, twisted metal hulks drifting like forgotten bones. The interceptors hesitated, their precise maneuvers balking at the chaos. One misjudged, clipping a derelict and veering off in a spray of debris. But the lead ship adapted, accelerating. A final volley streaked out, slamming into the shuttle's rear. Alarms wailed, engines critical, power flickering. They burst through the field, tumbling into clearer space but trailing smoke and sparks. Lena hooped faintly. We lost them for now. But we're limping. That hit cooked our hyperdrive coils. Elara exhaled, the weight settling. The backdoor was still ahead, but the cost was mounting. A crippled ship, strained resources, and the Council's hounds now alerted. Humanity's future hung by thinner threads, but they'd weave stronger ones yet. Patch what you can. We press on. The dim hum of the auxiliary generators filled the engineering bay, a constant reminder that the Endeavor's main power core was still offline. Lena wiped sweat from her brow, her fingers smudged with conductive gel as she traced the fractured relay panel. Sparks danced like fireflies in the low gravity, and she cursed under her breath, the witty edge in her voice dulled by exhaustion. This isn't a glitch, it's a damn puzzle with half the pieces missing. Alex stood at the doorway, his posture straight despite the ache in his shoulders from hauling debris earlier. He was the brave one, always charging ahead, but even he felt the weight of the Council's declaration echoing in his mind. Victory claimed, resources rerouted, leaving their ships stranded on the edge of the nebula. The external challenge wasn't some dramatic battle. It was the slow bleed of life support, oxygen recyclers straining under the strain of a sabotaged fuel line. One wrong move, and the crew's air would thin to nothing, a quiet end in the void. Any luck? Alex asked, stepping closer. His voice was steady, but his eyes flicked to the readouts, pressure dropping, another percentage point gone. Lena straightened, tossing her toolkit aside with a clatter. Luck? If this were luck, I'd be sipping coffee on Earth right now. The bypass I rigged earlier? It's holding, but the nebula's interference is frying the connections faster than I can patch them. She gestured to the holographic display where red lines pulsed like veins. The plan had been simple: reroute power from non-essentials to jury-rig a short jump out of the interference field. But the first test had backfired spectacularly, surging energy that nearly overloaded the hull integrity. Now the recyclers were sputtering and the air tasted metallic, a harbinger of worse to come. From the comms panel, Vex's voice crackled through, the alien counselor's cautious tone laced with urgency. Vex, with their elongated limbs and multifaceted eyes, had been an unlikely ally, wary of human impulsiveness but bound by the shared stake in survival. Captain, the Council's fleet is not responding to hails. If we do not stabilize soon, we will be adrift indefinitely. My calculations show a 47% risk of total system cascade within the hour. Alex clenched his jaw, the camaraderie that had pulled them this far now tested by the rising stakes. We adapt, Vex. Lena, what if we vent the secondary cargo bay? Use the released pressure to boost the generators, give us enough juice for one clean burn. Lena's eyes narrowed, her mind racing through the variables. It was clever, born of human grit, but risky. The cargo held vital supplies, and venting meant losing them to the nebula's pull. Still, she nodded, the tension in her shoulders easing just a fraction. Bold. Stupid but bold. Let's make it work. They moved as a unit, Alex hauling the manual overrides while Lena sealed the connections. Vex coordinated from the bridge, their precise inputs guiding the sequence. The bay doors groaned open with a hiss, and for a moment the ship shuddered, the void claiming crates of rations and tools in a silent whirl. Alarms blared briefly, then quieted as power surged, lights brightening, recyclers humming back to life. But as the Endeavour lurched forward, initiating the jump, a new tremor rattled the deck. Lena grabbed the console, her face paling. Alex, sensors are picking up something in the nebula. Not interference. It's movement. Alex stared at the viewport, where shadows coalesced amid the glowing gases. The backfire wasn't just mechanical, it had drawn attention, stirring whatever lurked in the Council's so-called victorious frontier. The cost was immediate, supplies gone, and now eyes on them real and hungry. They had bought time, but the future felt farther away than ever. Captain Ilara Voss gripped the armrests of her command chair, the hum of the Odyssey's engines vibrating through the deck like a distant heartbeat. The view screen flickered with the nebula's swirling chaos, gaseous tendrils of violet and crimson that masked their position from the Council's pursuit ships. But the readings didn't lie. Life support was dipping, oxygen recyclers straining under the load of their ragtag crew. Status, Mira? Ilara asked, her voice steady despite the knot in her gut. She glanced at her engineer, who was hunched over a console, fingers dancing across holographic displays. Mira Torres wiped sweat from her brow, her dark curls sticking to her forehead. Recyclers are at 72% efficiency. We've got maybe 6 hours before the air turns sour. And that's if we don't hit another plasma flare. She shot a wry grin over her shoulder. Nothing like a nebula spa day to keep things exciting. From the navigation station, Kale, their tentative alien ally, a lanky vexary with iridescent skin, shifted uneasily. His 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a nervous tick. The Council vessels are closing. Their sensors pierce this fog better than ours. We must alter course now, or they will ensnare us. Ilara nodded, masking her doubt. Kale had defected from the Council's ranks only days ago, his warnings about their blockade ringing true so far. But trust was a luxury they couldn't afford, not with humanity's last exploratory fleet hanging in the balance. The Council had declared victory, sealing off the frontier sectors after humanity's bold push into uncharted space. Claim the stars for the greater good, their broadcast sneered, but Ilara knew better. It was fear of human grit outpacing their stagnant empire. Plot a vector through the densest plume, Ilara ordered. Use the interference to our advantage. Myra's hands flew, rerouting power from non-essentials. Lights dimmed in the bridge, casting long shadows that danced with the nebula's glow filtering through the hull. The ship groaned as thrusters fired, slipping into a thicker veil of gas. For a moment, relief flickered. Scans showed the Council signatures fading. Then alarms blared. Plasma surge incoming. Kale yelped, his voice a high-pitched trill. Direct hit on our trajectory. Ilara's plan had backfired. The dense plume wasn't shelter, it was a trap of volatile energy. The view screen erupted in white-hot fury as the surge slammed into the Odyssey, shields buckling under the assault. Sparks showered from overhead panels, and the deck lurched violently. Brace! Ilara shouted, her body slamming against the restraints. Mira cursed in Spanish, yanking levers to divert auxiliary power. The ship spun, inertial dampeners failing in a sickening whirl. Kale clung to his station, his skin paling to a sickly blue. They stabilized after an eternity of chaos, but the damage was done. Myra's console lit up with red warnings. Shields at 40%. Worse, recyclers took a direct overload. Efficiencies plummeting to 45%. We've bought ourselves an hour tops. Ilara unstrapped, crossing to Myra's side. The engineer's face was grim, but her eyes sparked with that unyielding spark, human ingenuity at its core. We need a workaround. Can we jury-rig the waste processors to filter oxygen from the nebula gas? It's risky, but... Kale interjected, his mandibles clicking in agitation. Impossible. The composition is toxic to your kind. One breach and you'll suffocate in euphoria before the end. Ilara met his gaze, her jaw set. Then we adapt. Humanity didn't cross the void by playing it safe. She turned to Mira. Break out the EVA suits. We'll vent the auxiliary bays and siphon what we can manually. Mira hesitated, then nodded, her wits surfacing in a dry chuckle. Manual labor in a nebula? Sounds like a promotion. But as she moved to gather the gear, Ilara caught the flicker of fear in her eyes, the real cost sinking in. One mistake and they'd join the ghosts of failed expeditions. The Council ships reappeared on scans, closer now, their victory broadcasts crackling over open channels. Surrender, humans. The future is ours. Ilara clenched her fists. Not yet. She keyed the comms. All hands prep for hazard ops. We're not done fighting. As the team suited up, the nebula's glow painted their visors in eerie light, a reminder that survival demanded more than tech, it demanded the will to rewrite the stars. But with recyclers failing and pursuers closing, Ilara wondered if their grit would outlast the void's embrace. Captain Elena Vasquez gripped the edge of the console, her knuckles whitening as the ship's alarms blared in staccato bursts. The bridge felt smaller than ever, the hum of failing life support systems pressing in like a vice. Beside her, Dr. Liam Kerr hunched over his makeshift scanner, his fingers flying across the holographic display. Sweat beaded on his forehead, but his voice stayed steady, cautious, always the thinker amid chaos. They're adapting faster than we thought, Liam said, not looking up. The Council's blockade drones are rerouting power to their shields. Our EMP burst bought us 10 minutes tops. Elena nodded, her jaw set. Brave didn't mean reckless. It meant pushing when every instinct screamed retreat. She glanced at the viewport, where the debris field of shattered asteroids loomed like jagged teeth. The Council had claimed this sector as neutral ground, but humanity's rogue colony ship had turned it into a battlefield. No grand speeches, just survival, one calculated risk at a time. From the engineering station, Mira Chin shot her a wry grin, her witty edge cutting through the tension like a laser. 10 minutes? That's optimistic. Hull integrity's at 60%. If we don't vent the auxiliary bays soon, we'll be breathing vacuum party favors. Mira was the spark, the one who jury-rigged solutions from scrap. Her hands, calloused from years in the yards back on New Terra, danced over the controls, sealing off a leaking conduit with a patch of adaptive alloy. The ship groaned in response, a deep metallic shudder that vibrated through the deck plates. Elena straightened, her mind racing through options. The initial plan, slip through the blockade using the asteroid field for cover, had backfired spectacularly. One drone had clipped their flank, frying half the navigation array. Now, with the Council's fleet closing in, retreat meant dooming the colonists in the hold below. 500 souls, betting everything on this gamble for a new home. Options? Elena asked, her voice clipped. Liam tapped his scanner, pulling up a flickering map. We could overload the drive core, create a pulse to scatter the drones. But it'd fry our engines for good. Stranded in hostile space. Mira snorted, rerouting power with a flourish. Or we play chicken. Use the debris as a slingshot, ram the lead drone. Humans invented demolition derby, let's show 'em. Elena waited, the weight of command settling heavy. The Council had broadcast their victory hours ago, claiming humanity's expansion halted, the stars locked behind their edicts. But here in the dim glow of the bridge, that claim felt like hollow words. She thought of the families below, packed into cryopods, dreaming of red earth under blue skies. No ramming, she decided. Liam prepped the core overload, but minimal yield, just enough to blind them. Mira, angle us into the thickest debris cluster. We'll ghost through while they're reeling. Liam hesitated, his cautious nature flickering in his eyes. It's risky. If the pulse backlashes, then we adapt, Elena cut in, meeting his gaze. Like always. Mira hooped softly, her fingers blurring on the controls. The ship lurched forward, thrusters firing in short, evasive bursts. Alarms wailed as debris pinged off the hull, each impact a spark of adrenaline. Through the viewport, the drones swarmed closer, their sleek forms glinting under distant starlight, a mechanical hive enforcing the Council's decree. Liam initiated the sequence, the core humming to life with a rising whine. 3, 2. The pulse erupted, a silent wave rippling through the void. Drones stuttered, their formations fracturing like shattered glass. Elena held her breath as the ship plunged into the debris cloud, shadows swallowing them whole. But as they emerged on the far side, a new alert pierced the brief silence. Liam's scanner lit up with fresh signatures, reinforcements heavier than before. The Council's response wasn't retreat, it was escalation. Mira cursed under her breath, plotting their next vector. They're not done. That was just the appetizer. Elena leaned forward, resolve hardening her features. Hardening. The future wasn't claimed in council chambers, it was forged here in the grit of improvisation. Keep us moving. We've got more tricks up our sleeve. The ship accelerated into the unknown, the stars ahead a promise laced with peril. Captain Ilara Voss gripped the edge of the console, her knuckles whitening against the cold metal. The dim emergency lights cast long shadows across the bridge of the Endeavour, flickering like hesitant breaths in the stale air. Her crew, what was left of them, huddled nearby. Jax, the wiry engineer with grease-streaked cheeks and a perpetual squint. Mira, the sharp-tongued navigator whose optimism had frayed into quiet determination. And Lena, the young xenobiologist who still believed in talking their way out of this mess. The Council's blockade had tightened like a noose. Their sleek dreadnoughts loomed on the viewscreen, a wall of iridescent hulls blocking the jump lane to Sol. They think they've won, Ilara muttered, her voice steady despite the knot in her gut. The ultimatum had come hours ago. Surrender the Endeavour's core tech, the fusion drive that had let humanity punch above its weight, or face obliteration. The Council claimed it was for galactic balance, but Ilara knew better. It was fear, plain and simple, of humans spreading too far too fast. Jax wiped his brow with a rag that had seen better days. Shields are at 20% cap. That last volley cooked our relays. If we push the engines now we might slip through, but it'll be a rough ride. He glanced at the schematics scrolling on his tablet, fingers dancing over the controls. A spark jumped from a nearby panel, and he cursed under his breath, batting it away. Mira leaned over the NAV console, her eyes tracing the holographic star map. There's a debris field off our starboard, remnants from that old mining op. If we weave through it we could mask our signature. But one wrong turn. She trailed off, the implication hanging heavy. The Endeavour wasn't built for dogfights, she was an explorer, nimble but fragile. Lena straightened, clutching a data pad with alien script glowing faintly. Wait. The Council's envoy mentioned a protocol, something about a neutral arbiter beacon in the field. If we hail it, we might buy time. Force a parley. Her voice carried that earnest lilt, the kind that had gotten them out of scrapes before. But Ilara saw the doubt in her eyes. The Council had ignored pleas like that for weeks. Ilara nodded, decision crystallizing. Jax, reroute power to maneuvering thrusters. Mira, plot the weave, tight as you can. Lena, prep the hail. We're not surrendering, Jack. The ship groaned as Jax initiated the transfer, a deep vibration rumbling through the deck plates. Alarms blared softly, warning of overloads, but they pushed on. As the Endeavor lurched forward, the debris field swallowed them whole. Chunks of shattered asteroid tumbled lazily, glinting under distant starlight. Myra's hands flew across her controls, the ship banking sharply to avoid a jagged fragment the size of a shuttle. Holding course, she said, teeth gritted. A proximity alert wailed, too close. Ilara braced as they skimmed past, the hull shuddering from the near miss. Jax's voice cut through the tension. Engine straining, Cap. We've got maybe 10 minutes before she overheats. Sweat beaded on his forehead, but his focus didn't waver. He patched an auxiliary cooling from the life support, a jury rig that would leave them gasping for air soon enough. Lena's hail connected with a chime. The view screen split, revealing the Arbiter beacon's automated interface, a neutral AI from some long-forgotten treaty. Vessel Endeavor, state your grievance, it intoned, its voice a neutral monotone. Humanity's not done yet, Lena replied, her words measured. The Council's blockade violates the Outer Rim Accords. We demand mediation. She fed in the data, logs of unprovoked attacks, intercepted transmissions proving the Council's duplicity. The AI processed lights pulsing. Outside, a Council interceptor peeled off from the blockade, sensors sweeping the field. Mira spotted it first. They're onto us, vectoring in. Ilara's mind raced. The plan had been to use the beacon as cover, but now it was a beacon in truth, drawing fire. Jax, can we spoof their scans? Make us look like debris? He grinned fiercely, already typing. On it. Rerouting emissions to mimic rock signatures. The ship dimmed further, life support cycling down to a whisper. Air grew thick, each breath a reminder of the cost. The interceptor closed, weapons hot. But the AI's response crackled through. Grievance acknowledged. Mediation initiated. All parties stand down. The Council's ship hesitated, then veered away as the beacon broadcast the lockdown signal, a temporary shield enforced by ancient protocols even they couldn't ignore. Relief washed over the bridge, mingled with exhaustion. Ilara exhaled, slumping slightly. They bought hours, maybe a day. But the Endeavor's systems were frayed, and the Council wouldn't wait forever. As the debris field receded, Jax restored minimal power, the hum of the ship returning like a weary heartbeat. Lena met Ilara's gaze. That was close. What now? Now, Ilara said, resolve hardening. We fix this rig and show them why humanity doesn't quit. The stars ahead beckoned, a promise of the fight still to come. But in the quiet moment she felt the weight of it all, the crew's trust, the future hanging by a thread. Elena gripped the armrest of the command chair, her knuckles whitening as the view screen flickered with incoming data streams. The Odyssey's bridge hummed with the low thrum of emergency power, every light dimmed to conserve what little they had left after the Council's latest sabotage pulse. Jax hunched over the engineering console, his fingers dancing across the holographic interface, sweat beading on his forehead despite the chill in the air. Gotta work around on the auxiliary thrusters, Jax muttered, his voice laced with that familiar wry edge. But it's jury-rigged from the water recyclers. One wrong surge and we'll be drinking our own exhaust for a week. Lee shot him a sidelong glance from her station, her diplomatic poise cracking just a fraction. Charming as always, Jax. If we don't slip past their patrol net in the next hour, witty one-liners won't save us. She turned back to the comms array, her fingers hovering over the encrypted channel to the away team on the surface. No response. The lingering consequence of their botched first landing, Council enforcers swarming the site, forcing Mira and the ground crew into hiding, hung heavy in the silence. The ship shuddered as another gravitational eddy from the system's unstable rings tugged at their hull. Elena felt it in her bones, the Odyssey groaning like an old friend pushed too far. They were down to 3% on the core reactor, the alien blockade tightening like a noose. The Council had proclaimed victory in their broadcasts, hailing their unyielding defense of the sector, but Elena knew better. Humanity hadn't come this far to yield. Status on the decoy probe? Elena asked, her voice steady, cutting through the tension. Jax nodded without looking up. Armed and cloaked. It'll mimic our signature, draw the patrols to the outer asteroid belt. Gives us a window, maybe 20 minutes, to skim the rings and reach the repair cache Mira stashed. The plan had formed in the dead of night shift, born of desperation and scraps of intel from Lee's backchannel contacts among the less dogmatic council fringes. No grand speeches, just quiet arguments over flickering schematics. Jax's clever hacks, Lee's cautious threading of alliances, Myra's grit from the front lines. But the first attempt had backfired spectacularly, the probe's signal glitching, alerting the enforcers instead of fooling them. Now with the ground team's comms dark, the stakes clawed higher. If they couldn't repair the drive, the Odyssey would drift into the rings, crushed or captured, and the colony's future with it. Alarms blared suddenly, red lights pulsing across the bridge. Incoming interceptors, Lee announced, her tone sharpening. 2 squadrons vectoring from Grid 7. They've spotted the probe, it's working, but they're splitting forces. Elena leaned forward, eyes narrowing at the tactical overlay. The rings loomed on the view screen, a swirling maelstrom of ice and rock, beautiful in its lethality. One wrong maneuver and they'd be pulverized. Helm, plot the skim path. Jax, divert everything to shields on the port side, we'll hug the density gradient. The ship lurched into motion, thrusters firing in stuttering bursts. Jax cursed under his breath, rerouting power lines that sparked and hissed. This is like threading a needle with a sledgehammer. Hold her steady, Cap. Through the viewport, the rings expanded, shards of frozen ammonia glinting like shattered diamonds against the void. Elena's mind raced, piecing together the fragments of their gamble. The repair cache, Myra's handiwork, bolted together from scavenged parts during their frantic surface run, held the key to jump capability. But reaching it meant navigating this hazard without the full engine array, trusting Jax's patchwork to hold. A proximity warning shrieked as the first interceptor skimmed too close, its energy lance grazing their shields in a blaze of plasma. The bridge tilted violently, consoles flickering. Lee braced against her panel, whispering urgent codes into the comms, hoping to sway a wavering patrol captain with promises of shared tech, human ingenuity for alien restraint. No answer yet. Impact in 10, the computer intoned flatly. Elena didn't hesitate. Evasive pattern delta, full burn on the recyclers. Now. Jax slammed the override, and the Odyssey surged forward, improvised thrust propelling them into the ring's heart. Debris pinged off the hull like hail on tin, each strike a reminder of the cost. They were buying time, but the Council's grip tightened with every evasion. Victory, they called it. Elena clenched her jaw. Not while breath remained. The cache beacon pulsed faintly on sensors, a lone star in the chaos. Almost there. But as the interceptors regrouped, closing the net, Elena wondered if Mira had made it, or if this clever adaptation would end in the cold embrace of the rings. Elena gripped the edge of the console, her knuckles white against the humming metal. The bridge of the Aurora shuddered as another plasma burst grazed their shields, the lights flickering in protest. Marco was already barking orders at the engineering team below, his voice crackling over the comms like gravel under boots. Reroute auxiliary power to the forward arrays, now. If we don't hold this vector, we're driftwood. The alien fleet loomed on the view screen, a swarm of sleek, iridescent hulls cutting through the debris field like predators in tall grass. The Council had declared victory hours ago, broadcasting their triumph across the quadrant. Humanity's ragtag armada broken, the Aurora the last defiant spark. But Elena knew better. They'd lured the bulk of the enemy into this asteroid graveyard, betting on the rocks to do what their dwindling firepower couldn't. It was a desperate gambit, born of Marco's late-night sketches and her unyielding faith in human stubbornness. Captain, Lieutenant Kira Voss said from navigation, her voice steady despite the sweat beading on her brow. Kira, the cautious one, had argued against this all along, too many variables, too thin a margin. Now her fingers danced over the controls, plotting micro-jumps through the field. They're adapting. That lead frigate's deploying drones to clear our path. Elena nodded, forcing her gaze away from the encroaching shadows. The cost was already mounting. The Valiant gone silent 20 minutes back, its crew of 200 reduced to echoes in the void. She could almost hear the Council's smug decree replaying in her mind. Surrender, primitives, and join the enlightened order. No. Marco, status on the gravitic pulse? Elena asked, leaning into the intercom. A pause, filled with the whine of straining machinery. It's unstable, Cap. The core's overheating from the last deflection. One more shot might fry the whole system. His tone carried that familiar wit, edged with grit. But, hey, if we're going out, might as well make it spectacular. She allowed a tight smile. Marco's humor was the glue holding them together, a reminder that they weren't just surviving, they were fighting smart. The plan had been elegant in theory. Use the asteroid's gravity wells to slingshot their torpedoes, turning the debris into a weapon. But the Council ships were learning, their AI predictors mapping the chaos faster than Kira could evade. Divert coolant from life support, Elena decided. We adapt or we die. Kira, take us into the thick of it, aim for the cluster at bearing 240. Kira's eyes widened fractionally, but she complied, the Aurora lurching as thrusters fired. Alarms blared, hull integrity dropping, shields at 30%. The view screen filled with tumbling rock and enemy fire, a ballet of destruction where one wrong move meant oblivion. As they plunged deeper, Elena spotted it. A massive asteroid pocked with ancient craters, drifting lazily into their path. Imperfect but workable. Marco, sync the pulse to that big one. Let's give them a taste of human improv. The ship groaned under the strain, vibrations rattling through Elena's bones. Marco's voice cut back, laced with triumph. Locked and loaded. Firing in 3, 2. The pulse erupted, an invisible ripple warping the asteroid's trajectory. It hurtled forward, smashing into the lead frigate with a silent bloom of debris. Enemy drones scattered like startled fish, and for a heartbeat the swarm faltered. But the victory was fleeting. A return salvo pierced their weakened shields, shearing off a sensor array in a shower of sparks. Consoles sparked, and Kira slumped forward, clutching her side, shrapnel from the impact. Elena was at her side in an instant, pressing a med patch to the wound. Hold on. We're not done. Kira grimaced, nodding through the pain. Course set, but they're closing the net. Elena straightened, resolve hardening like forged steel. The Council might claim the stars, but humanity claimed the fight. And in this graveyard, they'd carve their legacy from the bones of defeat. Captain Elara Voss gripped the controls of the battered shuttle, her knuckles white against the worn plasteel. The engine hummed unevenly, a testament to the jury-rigged repairs she'd coaxed from scavenged parts. Outside the viewport, the asteroid field's debris spun lazily, but she knew better. Kragg's interceptors were closing in, their sleek forms cutting through the void like predators scenting blood. They're gaining, Cap, murmured Jax from the co-pilot's seat, his voice steady despite the sweat beading on his brow. The wiry engineer wiped his hands on his jumpsuit, fingers still smudged with lubricant from the last fix. He'd always been the cautious one, double-checking every weld, but now his eyes flicked to the scanners with a grit born of desperation. Elara nodded, not taking her gaze from the readouts. I see them. 2 minutes until they're in weapons range. Rhea, status on the decoy? From the rear compartment, Rhea's voice crackled over the intercom, laced with her usual wit sharpened by exhaustion. Decoy's primed, but it's a finicky beast. One wrong pulse and it'll fizzle like a bad joke. Give me 30 seconds. The shuttle lurched as a micrometeorite grazed the hull, sending vibrations through the frame. Elara adjusted course with a flick of her wrist, weaving between tumbling rocks the size of shuttles. The Council had claimed victory weeks ago, broadcasting their triumph across the sector. Humanity's fleet shattered, their colony world ceded. But Elara's team, her Jax, Rhea, and the ghost of their lost comrade in the NAV computer, had slipped the noose. Now, with the last prototype drive core in their hold, they were the spark that could reignite the fight. Jax leaned forward, plotting a vector on his makeshift console. If we slingshot around that big rock, we might buy time. But it'll stress the engines, could blow if we're not careful. Do it, Ilara said, her tone brooking no argument. Brave didn't mean reckless, it meant trusting the team. She punched in the maneuver, the shuttle groaning as inertial dampeners strained. Ria's laugh echoed faintly. Engines hot. Decoy launching in 3, 2, 1. A soft thud vibrated through the deck as the probe ejected, its systems mimicking the shuttle's signature. On the scanners, a duplicate blip appeared, drawing the interceptor's fire. Bolts of plasma lanced out, illuminating the rocks in stark blue flashes. One interceptor veered toward the decoy, exploding in a silent bloom of fire and debris. But the second held course, its pilot too sharp for the ruse. They're not biting fully, Jax warned. Adjusting shields to port side. Ilara's mind raced, calculating odds. The drive core was their edge, a human invention folding space without the Council's bulky relays. If they delivered it to the hidden outpost, humanity could strike back, turn the tide. Losing it meant erasure, not just defeat. A real cost, their lives, the future. Options? She asked, voice calm amid the alerts. Ria chimed in. Vent the auxiliary thrusters. Make it look like we're venting plasma. Might confuse their sensors long enough to dip into the dense field. Jax shook his head. Risky. Could unbalance us. Ilara glanced between them, seeing the unspoken. Jax's caution clashing with Ria's boldness, but both anchoring her resolve. We do it. Jax prepped the vents. Ria synced the timing. The shuttle shuddered as Jax triggered the release, a plume of ionized gas erupting from the side. Sensors across the sector would read it as a failing ship, life support critical. The interceptor hesitated, its course wavering as it queried the anomaly. Ilara pushed the throttle, diving into the asteroid cluster. Chunks of ice and metal whipped past, close enough to scrape paint. One clipped the wing, alarms blaring, but she held steady. Heart pounding, she watched the interceptor pull back, buying them precious distance. Outpost in range, Jax announced, relief threading his words. But the core's overheating from the maneuvers. We land hot. Ilara allowed a grim smile. Better hot than dead. The shuttle broke free of the field, stars streaking as they accelerated toward the faint signal of sanctuary. The Council might claim their hollow win, but humanity's ingenuity burned brighter, forged in the void, unyielding. Behind them the interceptor regrouped, but too late. The outpost defenses flickered to life, automated turrets swiveling. Ilara's team had made it, the core intact, but the chase had left scars. A fractured hull, Jax's limp from the jolt, Ria's decoy the last of their spares. Victory, but at a price that lingered like the taste of scorched air. Elena gripped the console's edge, her knuckles whitening as the ship's alarms blared in staccato bursts. The Council's blockade loomed on the viewscreen, a glittering web of drones and energy fields encircling the human outpost like a noose. Marco hunched over the auxiliary panel, sweat beading on his forehead, his fingers flying across the holographic keys. They're adapting faster than I thought, he muttered, voice tight. That last pulse we sent? It's like they anticipated it. Our jammers are down to 30%. She nodded, not trusting her voice yet. The air in the bridge felt thicker, recycled oxygen laced with a faint metallic tang of overheating circuits. Outside, the stars blurred into streaks as their vessel, the Pioneer, dodged another barrage of warning shots. The Council had declared victory hours ago, broadcasting across the sector that humanity's reckless expansion was contained. But Elena knew better. They hadn't accounted for the grit baked into every human bone. Options? She asked, turning to Lyra, the avian diplomat who defected to their side 2 cycles back. Lyra's feathers ruffled in agitation, her beak clicking softly as she scanned the tactical display. Cautious by nature, she'd argued against this gambit from the start. Too many variables, too little margin for error. But now her sharp eyes narrowed with resolve. We overload their central node, Lyra said, her voice a melodic trill edged with steel. It's risky. If we miss, the feedback could fry our systems. But it's the only way to blind them long enough for the outpost to break free. Marco snorted, wiping his brow with the back of his hand. Risky? That's understatement of the millennium. We've got one shot at this before they lock us out for good. He glanced at Elena, his wits subdued by the stakes. The resource shortage had hit them hard. Life support rationed, replicators sputtering on fumes. One wrong move, and the Pioneer became a drifting tomb. Elena straightened, her mind racing through the schematics they'd pieced together from scavenged council data. Brave didn't mean foolish. It meant pushing when retreat meant surrender. Do it, she said. Marco, reroute power from non-essentials. Lyra, sync the targeting with the outpost's beacon. The ship shuddered as they initiated the sequence. Marco's hands trembled slightly, but he steadied them, inputting the commands with the precision of someone who jury-rigged half the vessel's guts during their escape from the inner rim. A low hum built in the deck plating, vibrating up through Elena's boots. On the view screen, the blockade's drones swarmed closer, their lights pulsing like predatory eyes. 10 seconds, Lyra announced, her talons tapping rhythmically on her station. The tension coiled tighter, the bridge's dim emergency lights casting long shadows that danced with each jolt from incoming fire. Elena's heart pounded, memories flashing of the Council's smug envoy declaring human inferiority in that sterile chamber, claiming victory before the game had even begun. The pulse fired. A brilliant arc of blue energy lanced out from the Pioneer, slicing through the void toward the blockade's heart. Drones scattered, but too late. The node erupted in a cascade of sparks, the web flickering like a dying spider. Cheers erupted from the comms, faint, crackling voices from the outpost confirming their breach. But the victory tasted bittersweet. Alarms wailed anew as secondary systems on the Pioneer shorted out, lights dimming to red. Marco cursed under his breath, already diving into repairs. We bought them time, Elena said, her voice steady despite the ache in her chest. The cost was real, their shields were gone, and the Council's reinforcements were inbound. Humanity had claimed a foothold, but the future hung by a thread, demanding one more push. The hum of the assembly chamber vibrated through Elena's bones as she stood at the podium, her fingers gripping the edge until her knuckles whitened. The holographic displays flickered around her, replaying the data feeds from the outer rim, colonies holding firm, ships rerouting power with makeshift ingenuity, and the Council's vaunted blockade cracking under the weight of human persistence. Beside her, Marcus adjusted his collar, his usual wry grin tempered by the shadows under his eyes. They'd been awake for 3 days straight, piecing together the final arguments from scraps of intercepted transmissions and jury-rigged simulations. Across the vast chamber, the alien delegates shifted in their seats, their bioluminescent skins pulsing with unease. The Vorshi Elder, its tendrils coiling tightly, had just conceded the third point. Humanity's unorthodox energy lattice had bypassed their sanctions, turning what was meant to be a stranglehold into a web of shared vulnerabilities. Your species adapts where others fracture. It rasped through the translator, the words echoing like gravel in the air. Elena caught Marcus's eye. He nodded once, a silent anchor in the storm. She stepped forward, her voice steady despite the knot in her chest. The Council declared victory in isolation, but we've shown that true progress isn't hoarded, it's forged in the fire of necessity. The chamber fell silent as she activated the final hologram. A cascade of human-led innovations, from the asteroid miners repurposed as relay stations to the viral algorithms that had unified disparate fleets. No grand speeches, just the raw evidence of grit, lives risked, alliances mended on the fly, and a future clawed back from the brink. The vote tallied in pulses of light, the chamber's atmosphere thickening with anticipation. When the majority icon flared green, a murmur rippled through the ranks, alien and human alike. Marcus exhaled sharply, clapping her shoulder as the gavel fell. Victory, but not without scars. The outer colonies would rebuild for generations, alliances fragile as fresh welds, and the Council's gaze now sharper, watching for the next spark of defiance. As they exited into the corridor, the stars visible through the viewport seemed a fraction brighter. Elena paused, tracing a finger along the glass. We didn't just win a seat, she murmured. We claimed the table. Marcus chuckled softly, the sound warm against the cold metal. And next time we'll build our own. The doors hissed shut behind them, sealing in the echo of what they'd earned, and what still lay ahead.